my dad in Cuba. He looks, I'm being sarcastic, very nourished. The reason he's like this is because some days they had to choose whether they were going to eat or their daughter was going to eat.
Bibiana Podestad is a Cuban-American living in Miami.
Hola.
She ran for political office as a Republican in Florida in 2020. Her family fled Cuba when she was 3 years old.
Right when my dad decided we were going to leave on a raft is when, thank God, our residency papers came in, our visa, and we were able to leave the following year.
My whole family, they're immigrants from Mexico. They came here in the 1980s.
Bash Herrera is a Mexican-American living in Arizona. For the past few years, he has canvassed for Democratic candidates in Phoenix.
I ended up dropping out of high school. I didn't get a good education here. Arizona is like one of the worst when it comes to education. My parents really struggled, like living paycheck to paycheck, and doing political work was really cool because then I started to like understand why I experienced what I experienced, and not only that, but that I can actually do something about it.
Herrera and Podestad are among 32 million eligible Latino voters in the country's biggest ethnic or racial minority, and some politicians court them the same and simply see them as one. The Latino vote.
When we talk about the Latino vote, it can be very, very misunderstood and misguided to just try to paint it in one broad stroke. You know, it's like a study in contrasts, almost, what happened in Arizona and what happened in Miami.
Because like Herrera and Podestad, their experiences as a Mexican-American and a Cuban-American are different, and that has influenced the way they voted in the presidential election.
I voted for Donald Trump because in this day and age, it was either the socialist, democratic mentality on one end, or at least what was being fed, or Donald Trump on the other side.
Our opponents want to turn America into communist Cuba or socialist Venezuela, and we're not going to let that happen.
President Donald Trump raised fears about socialism as a strategy throughout his campaign, and it appears to have worked among the majority of Latino voters in southern Florida.
Cubans are very much of the thought process that between socialism and communism, there's only a step over. So it's a very touchy subject. And I think that's ultimately what brought a lot of Cubans to vote for Donald Trump in this cycle.
Trump picked up more Latino voters in several key battleground states in the 2020 election. He got more than 47% of the Latino vote in Florida. That's up from about 35% in 2016. And in the Miami Gold Coast, where the biggest Cuban population in the U.S. lives, 55% of Latinos voted for him. But in Arizona, about 63% of Latinos voted for Joe Biden. Herrera was one of them.
I mean, we're so close to the border. It's a big portion of our population is Hispanics and Latinos. So I think it is a really important issue here, even outside of like laws that are racist, like SB 1070. But when it comes to every other inequality that we experience, whether it's healthcare or education or the incarceration rates, it's disproportionately people of color.
SB 1070, a law that passed in Arizona in 2010, allows law enforcement in the state to legally check the immigration status of anyone suspected of being in the country illegally during a stop, detention, or arrest. Resistance to the law got many Latinos out and canvassing for the Democratic Party this election.
Some of it's been repealed, but a lot of it is still on the books. And that's another reason why we're continuing doing, that's one reason why we're doing this work still.
The Latino population in the U.S. is diverse and complex. And Latino voters care about varying issues, something Podestad and Herrera say future candidates will need to consider in order to get their vote.
Yeah, that was when we first got here. We were living at my grandfather's house. This is what he looks like now. If anyone runs for office and they want the Cuban American vote, they would have to separate themselves from any sort of socialist dialogue. Any association to that will make you lose the Cuban American vote in South Florida.
People want to be okay during this pandemic. People don't want to get evicted. People want to have a living wage. People want to have health care. That's really rational. Like, all these things are very rational, but we have to fight for it. And that's what it's about to me.